Slept on Cinema is sponsored by Training Ties, the ultimate shoe tying tool. If you know someone who's struggling with shoe tying for any reason, Training Ties is the perfect solution. It turned out to be a beef, chicken, anchovy, and jam sandwich. The ingredients cancel each other out and become indigestible.
Rarely has a movie used so much heavy artillery to shoot itself in the foot.
Joyless, tasteless, and soulless. Last Action Hero can't decide if it's an action, a comedy, or a spoof.
Last Action Hero is a stretch. Unfortunately, it's a stretch that proves the star wasn't that elastic to begin with.
Austin O'Brien, the child actor equivalent of fingernails on a chalkboard.
Incredibly stupid action comedy that's neither thrilling nor funny.
Feels like a farewell of sorts to Arnold.
Welcome to this week's episode of Slept on Cinema. I'm your host, Stan Steamer. I'm here with my co-host,
Grove Street.
And we are getting into Last Action Hero this week. Super excited to get into this. I feel like it's like a movie fan's movie. There's so many references. There's so much you see in it. Every time you watch it, you see more. It's just a fun piece of sort of an homage, if you will, to a lot of the type of movies that we watch and we enjoy on this pod.
Absolutely. I saw this when I was younger, pre-internet, and I didn't know it was a flop. I thought this movie was incredible when I saw it. I only had to find out like later on reading the paper or hearing from other people or like watching entertainment television that it was a flop and not good. But when I was watching it at the time, I thought it was an incredible movie, and I still do now.
It's also another film that we're doing that has just a great movie poster. Like I remember seeing this movie like that. I don't know what that is, but I want to see it right now because it looks so good.
Well, this movie does a great job of promoting Jack Slater. It knows how to advertise his movies, his trailers, and his box covers, and it carried over to the actual movie, Last Action Hero.
Yeah, the marketing was great. We'll touch on the marketing a bit, I guess, later. But
yep. All right, I'll go in with the rotten premise here.
Yeah,
following the death of his father, young Danny Madigan takes comfort in watching action movies featuring the indestructible Los Angeles cop Jack Slater. After being given a magic ticket by theater manager Nick, Danny is sucked into the screen and bonds with Slater. When evil fictional villain Benedict gets his hands on the ticket and enters the real world, Danny and Jack must follow and stop him. Critics, 40%. Audience, 47%. Makes sense that the audience would like this more. I'm just still shocked that it's below 50%. I do completely understand the critic score of 40%.
I mean, I'm actually surprised the critic score isn't far lower. This just doesn't seem to me the type of movie that the critic crowd would get into. I could just see them saying, this is dumb. I've seen this before. And they have seen it before. That's kind of the point of this to some extent, is that it's kind of a send up of the genre while also being a fun and exciting action movie at the same time. So this came out in June. It was June 17th, 1993. It was actually the number 2 movie when it was released.
Wow.
Which is impressive considering that number 1 was just the second week of Jurassic Park, which was as we've discussed on this pod and other episodes, was just a behemoth of a movie back when movies could just carry the theaters for weeks or months on end. It grossed 137 million worldwide on a budget of 85 million. I don't know how the math on this works, but somehow that ended up with a financial loss of 26 million. I guess there's all sorts of other things that maybe don't get factored into the budget. So people didn't walk away from this with their pockets lined with cash. But something that's helpful to understanding the film is the development and how the script came to be, because it's kind of an interesting story and I think explains some of the challenges that the film faced and also just some of how the plot unfolds. I think it's helpful to know. So the film was written by Zach Penn and Adam Leff. This, I think, was their first film. And they were basically two friends who had graduated from Wesleyan. And they just watched a whole bunch of action movies together. And they were fans of the genre. And they kept seeing a lot of the same tropes over and over again, and decided to write a send up, a takedown of an action film, and put together this script that was really kind of a biting takedown of the genre. And it ended up becoming the subject of a bidding war at the time for these two unknown scriptwriters. And they ended up selling it for $350,000, which at the time was sort of an unheard of amount, especially for folks who were sort of coming out of nowhere. At that point, it sort of gets out of their hands. So Arnold gets interested in the project. And once he gets attached to it, the script kind of gets the Hollywood treatment to an extent. So they bring in Shane Black, who's this very well-known Hollywood screenwriter. He was coming off the Lethal Weapon movie, which was a huge success. And he was sort of known and had written a bunch of these action movies that this script was intended to be playing on. So, you're bringing on the scriptwriter for the movie that you're supposed to be spoofing. So he does this massive rewrite. They bring in a whole bunch of other writers, and they just keep bringing in people. We need a woman's touch. They bring in several women writers to give their writing. We need some more comedic elements. They're bringing comedic writers.
Well, they left the women out when it came to whiskers.
Yeah. And then in terms of a director, they had, they'd sunk so much money into the script writing and with Arnold that they bring in John McTiernan, who had done Die Hard and Predator. And he's also sort of a famous director for this type of action movie that they're trying to do a send up of. He, when he gets involved, also does a massive rewrite of the script. So at this point, this thing has been just chopped into pieces. Everyone's adding their own flavor. I haven't seen the original script, but I would love to read it because it's apparently very, very different. The other interesting part is apparently the rewrites to all of this. It delayed the movie to a pretty significant extent, and they had a timeline that they really wanted to hit on the release. So they only had 3 weeks to edit it. And for a movie of this, a movie that was this long, had this much going on in it, to only have 3 weeks to edit it is kind of insane.
That very much comes through the screen during the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we'll get into this in our second half, but it's kind of remarkable, sort of the amount of writing relative to the amount of editing. And the interesting point on marketing on this too, and this is kind of maybe just reflects sort of the whole movie as a whole, but they spent $500,000 on trying to put the name of this movie on a NASA rocket they were going to send up into space, and it would be the first space advertisement for a movie. I just spent $500,000 on this. But of course, the rocket launch was severely delayed. So this thing ended up not going up into space until months after the movie had already launched and kind of flopped in the theaters. So nobody really paid any attention to it by the time this thing went up. So it's
as this movie probably should have been delayed. I think Arnold was pushing for that. Like, let's not go up against this dinosaur movie, and let's take a little bit of time to edit this movie before we release it.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what went into the thought process there. If it was a little bit of, we're going to take down Spielberg here. We had this great movie. Who cares? Who cares about dinosaurs? And then they just didn't realize what they were doing. But I'm sure a lot of people regretted that decision.
Yeah, I think the biggest part there, like those rewrites and the lack of editing. And then even though they hear rumors of this big dinosaur Spielberg movie, to have like the hubris to be like, nah, I'm sure that's not going to be a big deal, and just release it a week after. Like, maybe you give it a minute and see how that does before you release it in the theaters right after that comes out.
Yeah. So, I mean, all of this to say that watching this, you get the feeling that this is a movie that's had a lot of different cooks involved. But having said that, there are a lot of elements in this movie that are fantastic. I think some of it's a little cluttered and some of it gets a little bit lost. But I do think that this is a movie that's really kind of perfect for our pod, because I think, as we've talked about from other movies, it's sort of the movies, for a movie to be a lot of fun, a movie to be a lot of, really enjoyable, it doesn't have to be perfect in every way. A lot of times there are like really excellent elements of a movie that get lost because there are pieces that don't work perfectly, but that doesn't mean you can't appreciate all those other parts that do work perfectly or do work almost perfectly or work just good enough to the point that it's really fun to watch.
Absolutely. And this
has
movie,
a
like
ton of those.
this movie, like it's 2 hours and 10 minutes long. They don't waste a second. Like they constantly, you can tell there's all these writers trying to jam their dialogue into the movie because there are so many things that you can point out about this movie to be on the lookout for.
Yeah. And in part, that's one of the reasons why it's so fun to watch. But great segue into our Bolo piece. And I feel like we could probably have a Bolo that runs for an hour. Just
Definitely.
Rattling
I think this is the
but
movie with the most possible Bolos that we've done so far.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially coming off of, Lake Placid, which is a much more streamlined film. This is on every screen. There's something interesting going on.
All right, let's get to it. Bolo, do you want to start with the cameos?
Yeah, I'm going to just rattle these off. There are so many cameos. I feel like when you have Arnold at the peak of his powers, he just pulled in everybody. I feel like everybody that was in his life in some way. And obviously no one can say no to Arnold. And everyone wants a piece of, the next great Arnold flick. So the cameos in this are phenomenal. I'm just going to rattle these off. So try to keep up. Tina Turner, Sharon Stone, the T-1000 from T2.
Can I pause for a second, though?
Stallone.
It wasn't just Sharon Stone. It was Catherine Trammell from Basic Instinct.
It was Catherine Trammell from Basic Instinct. Yeah, exactly. It was so perfectly timed for that in the 90s. Sylvester Stallone, kind of. And you'll keep an eye out for that. Angie Everhart, Maria Shriver, Little Richard.
Wait, is Angie Everhart okay, I won't say where, but there's a video store nearby?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Lisa Gibbons, Jim Belushi, Damon Wayans, Chevy Chase, friend of the pod, Jean-Claude Van Damme, MC Hammer, Wilson Phillips, Danny DeVito, sort of, and Ian McKellen.
Yeah, Ian McKellen was good.
Yeah, I was debating. I was like, is this even a cameo at this point? But I think it still is.
I think so too. Yeah, that's part of the fun of watching this movie. Every time you go back, is seeing a different cameo that you maybe didn't see before. So be on the lookout for those cameos and maybe for someone that we missed. I'll go powerful crotch kicks that may lift somebody off the ground.
Oof. All I got to say to that one. I'm going to go, and we mentioned this a little bit before, but I feel like we have to flag it. Just the movie store. Bolo, a movie store. And it also Bolo, some giveaways that it's actually a blockbuster.
Bolo, tiny hands.
I'm going to go, keeping on this theme here, Bolo, a mini disc.
Oh. Bolo, an ice cream cone.
A vicious ice cream cone, too.
Yep.
I'm going to say Bolo fart jokes.
I'll piggyback on this. Bolo, Lieutenant Decker referencing his butt.
I'm going to go Bolo light up gargoyles.
Wow, that's a very good one.
I love gargoyles, and I've never seen something light up, and they're fantastic.
Bolo, a Homer Simpson-esque closet.
Say Bolo, a nun with a gun.
Bolo harming the hair on someone's head.
This one's a little maybe subtle, but I'm going to say this is, for me, a very 90s reference. Bolo, a Velcro wallet.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great reference. Bolo, the F word.
Ooh, yeah. Be on the lookout, I think.
Yep.
I'm going to go Bolo, a truck exploding before impact.
I guess I'll piggyback on that a little bit. Bolo, Acme products.
Just classic. I'm going to go with my last Bolo here. Bolo, one dog pyramid.
That's very good. Yep. All right, I'll do my last one. Bolo, an electrocuted dead arm shooting a gun.
It's like we could go on and on and on.
We have to just stop ourselves here. That was only like a quarter of my list, but I didn't want it to drag on too long.
Yeah.
All right. We'll get to the next segment. What drink would you pair with this movie?
So I'm going to go maybe off brand here. And this is a non-alcoholic drink, but you could always spice it up with your liquor of choice for sure. but I'm going to go with a Mountain Dew Icy. So, I'm talking the things that they only serve at movie theaters. This just this makes me think of watching movies in the 90s at a movie theater with a bunch of crappy popcorn spilled everywhere. And I've got this 52-ounce giant Mountain Dew Icy that for whatever reason only exists at movie theaters. But this is a movie fan's movie, and you should be drinking something that reminds you of going to the movies.
And a 52-ounce drink is perfect for a movie of this length, too. You don't want to go in a small-sized drink. Whatever you get, it has to be big. This will make a little bit more sense for a drink to pair with the movie after you see it, but I would drink, if possible, a Flaming Moe or possibly another fictional drink of Milk of the Poppy. This would be attainable. It would make a little bit more sense after watching the movie, but those would be the two drinks I would go for to try and have some of my most sought after fictional drinks.
I love the Flaming Moe. That's just brilliant. I would love to be able to get one of those too.
All right. Enjoy the movie. It's going to be a good time.
Columbia Pictures is proud to present the screen's greatest action hero, Jack Slater. And Danny Madigan is his biggest fan.
Jack Slater 4.
But tonight, a magic ticket
It's a passport to another world.
will get Danny closer to the action than anyone ever dreamed.
Holy cow! I'm in the movie!
And you're going with him to a world that's bigger than life and better than real. This summer, it's head-on thrills, head-first excitement. And it's coming at you from both sides of the screen.
Where am I now?
This isn't the movies anymore, Jack. Please be careful. Things were different here.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is Jack Slater, and Jack Slater is the last action hero. The big ticket for '93.
I'll be back. Ha! You did not gonna say that, did you?
That's what you always say.
I do?
Welcome back.
Yeah, that was a wild ride. I actually, now that I say that out loud, I feel like this would have made a really fun amusement park ride. It sort of felt like an amusement park ride at times.
Yeah, it's an amusement park ride that's like really fun when it starts, and then towards the end, you're like, all right, I think it's time to get off.
Yeah. Maybe I'm not going to go for a second trip around.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a lot of fun. That movie is it's a very unique movie. There's not many movies like this. I'm thinking I know Scream was kind of meta for its time with horror movies about like talking about things that happened during horror movies. And this took it to another level.
I had the same exact thought. This made me think of Scream a lot in terms of just how they approached the sort of storytelling and like referencing itself and also
and
being
the rules.
an excellent movie. Yeah, sort of playing within this framework of movies that came before it and referencing them and knowing that you exist in that world, but also being a entertaining movie of that genre at the same time.
Yeah, it's a fine line between like a Scream and like a scary movie. And this kind of goes back and forth.
Scream is probably the pinnacle of that. Scary movie is probably the other end, but doing exactly what it intended to be. And this,
right.
You're totally right. It ping pongs between the two back and forth. Sometimes it hits that mark and it's fantastic, and sometimes it's like, all right, we get it.
Yeah. This draft is a little less cut and dry than other ones, but still a lot of great picks to be had. So you get the first pick of the draft. Who are you taking?
So I'm gonna take here having your cake and eating it too. So this is exactly what we've been talking about, this sort of attempt that you can sort of make a critique of a genre while also putting together a genre movie that is very entertaining to watch. It could have been tightened up, like obviously, I think anybody who watches this would say that, but I think that idea of sort of spoofing this while also enjoying a great action movie at the same time in that sort of 90s vibe, it's just great.
Yeah, I had read that the first cut of this was 4 hours long, and he brought it to the studio and like, we can't do this. You have to cut this down. So somehow 2 hours and 10 minutes seems short from where they started. But this is not like a cookie cutter movie, like an easy one to pull off. And I think it did a really good job, despite all of its issues, of pulling that off.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, it's easy to nitpick a lot of things in this movie, but that's not what we're about here.
Nope,
on
not at all.
Cinema.
This is the movie that hopefully you didn't watch with somebody who likes to nitpick and pick it apart, because that would ruin the experience. And if you just want to enjoy it, then this movie's perfect for that.
Yeah, that's true. Although fortunately, they probably would have left and you still would have had like an hour and a half of the movie by yourself.
Yep. All right. That's a good first pick. I'll move on to my first pick. So when the intro to Jack Slater 4 comes on and Danny is in the movie theater and he gets in the ticket after getting robbed and he finally sits down with his popcorn and it's coming on, I'm going to go with the joy of watching movies. The grin and the happiness that he has on his face when that movie is coming on just takes you back to a time when you're in like your early teens and you have that movie you've been waiting to watch forever and you're finally there and you have that like excitement. This movie is about the joy of watching movies. Like he's such a cinephile at a young age. He's already seen Amadeus and he's like 12 years old. So like this kid loves movies and this is his favorite character, a little bit of a replacement for his father who he tragically lost a few years ago. And he just could not be happier watching a movie, which is so, I mean, probably for us, just so relatable, because when you put on that movie that you've been waiting on forever for it to come on, you get there and you're just ready to go. That's what this movie is about to me, the joy of watching movies.
That's a great pick. And that is exceptionally relatable. I mean, when some movie comes out and you've been looking forward to, you've seen the trailer and you get to see it for the first time and you just really get to focus on it. And, you kind of shut everything else out that's going on. Who cares what else is like stressing you out in life? You just get to, sit down in front of the screen, experience some other crazy story for an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is. And it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, movies are a distraction, but for that time period, for that time that movie's running, just like for Danny, with all the bad stuff in his life, for this 2 hours, he's going to have a great time. Nothing else matters.
Yeah,
that's my first pick. Second pick, just because I found it funny, I'm going to go with Jack Slater's unnecessarily bad driving, where he leaves like a wake of destruction behind him. It's very like Naked Gun-esque, where Frank Drebin has no idea of the destruction that he causes behind him. Like when Jack is leaving the police station and he goes up the enter and he just like constantly like hits things. He's a great driver, but he just doesn't care. And he just leaves this just wake of destruction behind him. I found it funny every time.
I feel like you get that great, the car coming down the proper entrance. Slater!
They know the car. They know who would do that. It's perfect.
Yep, and from seeing him park, I was going to say sort of parallel park, but it's like next level parking where you can just swing the car right in.
Yeah, it's like what he did in like True Lies.
Yeah,
to park that car.
He can drive. He's living life.
He's living life.
That's a great pick. I am going to go with, for my second pick, the opening Jack Slater scene. The first time that we're sort of introduced to Jack Slater. And it's right in your face. You get Slater walking over the police cars in his cowboy boots, smoking a cigar. And it's just so perfect for what this movie is supposed to be. Like, if it could keep that intensity up for the entire film, this would have been one of the greatest movies of all time. And
it has all, I don't want to get into this now, but it has some tropes in it that are just perfect for action movies. And it also has, hey, you want to be a farmer? Here's a couple acres, and then just like kicks the guy in the nuts. Oh. It's just like and I can see then why Danny is so obsessed with Jack Slater in these movies, because I would have been too.
Oh, he's got great lines. He's got perfect clothes. He's got that perfect, like, I don't give a fuck attitude. He's kicking ass and he's doing it his way. And it's just perfect.
And just like another one of that, like popping the, like, you're going to lose your badge for this. And he's already ready and just flicks it back. I don't care.
Yep. I just love that. I love that scene so much.
Yep. That's a great pick.
All right. My third pick, I'm going to go with the use of colors in the film. the extreme, almost comic book-esque vibrancy in the Jack Slater world contrasted with the extreme drab, muted colors in the real world, especially sort of that Times Square, dark 90s griminess. And then you go in this California bright, everyone's got crazy clothes, everyone's driving these crazy colored cars.
The police stations.
Right. I just thought that was, I mean, obviously it was always very clear when you were in one world or the other.
Yeah, you didn't need any dialogue, and you could just see a screenshot of the scene and know whether they're in the movies or not.
Yeah, and it really contributed to that like feeling you had when you were watching it. You sort of get sucked into this is the movie world, this is the real world.
Yep, and this will get to my next one, but I guess there was a trope of bad apple. So instead of the Big Apple, you would show New York, and it was always this like dreary, dangerous, loud, chaotic place with tons of, taxis and people yelling, people getting mugged, and they showed that perfectly when they went back to the real world.
Yeah, that scene when Benedict just kills that random person.
Oh, that was incredible. He just realizes that the bad guys can win here.
Yeah.
Let's see, my third pick. I'm just going to go with like the fun part of, I don't know what you want to call it, but all the action movie callbacks, the tropes, the references, the E.T. bike scene, the Lethal Weapon or Seven, like I'm only a few days from retirement, or the T2 car jump, which was just like, they went off the bridge and landed that little like sewer or water drainage area.
Yeah, it's basically the exact same thing as T2 is amazing.
Yep, the Predator callback with practice about like you're sitting behind the desk eating government donuts, just like pushing pencils from Predator.
I love that moment for the sort of the ET bike ride scene where he realizes that he's the comedic sidekick.
Yeah,
I thought that was like perfect for that. Maybe this is a problem.
The and this is for moment when like the good guy catches the bad guy and it's like, and this is for my favorite second cousin, and you fill in whatever movie you want. This is for, and then it gets to like, this is from my ex-wife's house. He just slaps him on the wrist.
Yep.
The yelling superior, the same one from 48 Hours is the lieutenant. This one, Decker, who was absolutely amazing in this. About a year ago, I started watching everything with subtitles because I wanted to make sure I saw everything. And so watching those scenes with Decker, if you don't have the subtitles on, you can't tell what he's saying, but with it on, he just references having stuff done to his butt. Like the California raisins are dancing a jig in my Hershey Highway. Like he just says ridiculous things, and it's amazing. That's all he yells.
I'm gonna have to rewatch this with the subtitles because I missed probably half of the lines. It didn't even occur to me to put the subtitles on.
Oh, everything was subtitles. I don't want to miss anything anymore. It's perfect. And I'll just do one more. The extended disarming scenes where like, hey, let me see your gun. They throw it over, and then is that it? And there's always like 50 more guns. I'll go with the movie trope callbacks, whatever you want to call them. And we do our sleeper round.
Let's do it.
So in the process of researching this movie, I found out about the term lamp shading, which apparently is it's when the movie uses a line or something to make sure that the audience doesn't stop suspending their disbelief. For an example, when Danny's watching the movie and Jack goes to his favorite second cousin's house, then the house blows up. It's pretty clear that the two cops and Jack Slater are right next to each other, but Danny isn't worried at all. We don't know what the outcome yet is. And he's like, both cops dead, flesh wound for Jack Slater. And then that's what happens. So then you're like, you can't be like, hey, that wouldn't happen because you're already invested. Or like, we got to get him back in the movies so that it's only a flesh wound, even though he's dying here. Like once they say that, you're like, okay, I buy in. And this thing called lamp shading where you just pave the road so that like, whatever you're thinking this couldn't happen, no, this is why it could. And then you just don't, no one second guesses it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that it's really a brilliant use of that. And I'd never heard of that before, but this is, if you were going to teach like a film class, it's like, I would teach that term by showing this film, because it was moments like that you're talking about where it's like, oh, that's obviously a ridiculous outcome. But once Danny mentions the two cops dead and it's just a flesh wound, you're sort of like, Okay, well, I can't critique that now because they've already done that. It's like they took all the venom out.
Now am I not?
Whatever I was
As long as they're aware that it's a little ridiculous, then I'm in.
Right. A brilliant move. For my sleeper pick, this kind of made me think back to Time Cop a little bit. And you'll know why. Is when Danny comes back from Jack Slater world, and he's talking to Nick, the projectionist, about what happened. And Nick just instantly believes him. And he totally gets what's going on. I was watching it and I was like, oh, okay, now we're going to have to go through this whole thing where Nick doesn't believe him. We just cut through all of that and he instantly believes everything about this. And we get to move on to the actual exciting part.
It's the first time in this movie where they actually make something go faster than it probably typically would have.
Absolutely. I think if this movie took a lesson from that one scene, it could have been a vast improvement. But I don't know if you remember from Time Cop where, Jean-Claude Van Damme would constantly come back from his trip to the past working at a time machine police, and his boss would never have any idea about the fact that things could have changed. It's like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? He's not the president.
Yeah, I'm just like, dude, come on. And there's just none of that here, and it's great.
Yeah, that was really good because we could have easily wasted a lot of time trying to convince him, and it was good that they didn't. We had more time to sit around and chat at Danny's mom's house around the kitchen table.
Yeah, I feel like at some point they're like, we need more character development. Let's have a touching scene about classical music between Slater and Danny's mom.
Slater's allowed to talk to women for the first time.
Yeah.
All right, move on to our superlative, best cameo.
Yeah, best cameo. I think that an obvious category for this one. So many options to choose from. And I think this is one of these categories where if 10 different people watch this movie and you ask 10 different people to tell you their best cameo, you might get 10 different answers because there's not one runaway. But I'm going to go with Tina Turner. I thought Tina Turner really just set the stage. She's the mayor in that first Jack Slater scene where the scene is perfect, but it also just sets the stage for all the cameos that we're about to get. If Tina Turner, who was one of the biggest stars in music at the time, is going to be in this movie as the mayor, which is some random throwaway role, and it has nothing to do with music, you're just like, what aren't they going to do? Let's go. And I thought that just was like a perfect stage setting for the whole film.
It absolutely did set the stage. And we got so many great cameos during this movie. And that was a great place to start. Mine, we didn't cover in the beginning. There was a couple different types of cameos in this. There's like Tina Turner cameo, and then there's like T-1000. It's not like the actor that plays. It's not Sharon Stone. It's Catherine Trammell. So there's like, you can be the character cameo and you can be the actor cameo. Like Arnold himself, I guess, would be a cameo in this movie. But I'm going to go with Maria Shriver as my favorite cameo, and how annoyed she was with real Arnold to not bring up the restaurant talk. And she was so like upset with him. I had to Google this and I didn't find much, but she calls him low foreheaded. I don't know what that means, but I thought I get the implication, and I thought that was incredible. She's just like a wife who's just annoyed with the husband promoting his restaurants. Don't embarrass me. And he did talk about the restaurant, and she calls him a low forehead. And I thought that was an amazing dig. I have no idea what it means, but
I like that point you made too about Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's like, I mean, basically he is a cameo,
right?
To an extent. I feel like there were some other. I feel like we got to toss in some honorable mentions just because there was so much here.
Oh, absolutely.
Danny DeVito, but sort of more the cartoon cat, just because I think that cartoon cat was just a phenomenal part of the film where Danny's trying to convince them that this is, obviously a fictitious world because it's a cartoon cat. And it just doesn't faze them at all. Yeah,
the obvious like obtuseness to just not get what he's trying to say was just incredible.
Yeah. It was amazing. My other honorable mention, and this was because I earlier in the pandemic went through a very extensive film noir phase where I just night after night just binged on film noirs, was the Humphrey Bogart cameo in the police station. which curious how you like sort of get the rights to that or how that works when someone's dead and you're showing a clip of them. But I guess that came up with Star Wars more recently, but this is maybe the first time that was ever used. I don't know.
Yeah. I almost used the partner assignments as one of my draft picks because the morning roll call of who you're going to be matched up with that day. And someone got Humphrey Bogart, someone got Whiskers or, a Rabbi. It was just phenomenal. My honorable mention would be, this is coming off the backs of T2, which is such an incredible movie. So having like T-1000 do his aggressive walk where he like turns to the side, but also bumps somebody and he just breezes by in half a second. It was just like, oh my God, was that T-1000? They don't say it. Danny's just like, did you see that? And they just move along. But seeing T-1000 at that time, after that movie was just incredible. He was so terrifying to see on the screen back then. They even did that in Wayne's World. Like T-1000 showed up in Wayne's World.
Yeah. Just that guy, just amazing cameos.
Yep. All right. Do you want to get to one change to be a blockbuster for this movie? Maybe it's changes to be a blockbuster.
Yeah. So mine is maybe a bit of a cheat. And we also addressed this a bit earlier, but I'm going to say don't come out that weekend. I'm going to say come out 2 months later, give yourself another 8 weeks to edit it. And you're not up against Jurassic Park, but I'm sure if you had another 8 weeks to edit this movie, it would not be 2 hours and 10 minutes or whatever the runtime is here. You trim this thing down in an hour and a half, an hour 40. And we talked about some of the elements that are easy scenes to cut, but it's that scene with Slater and Danny's mom.
And this is like post what seemed like it was an hour and 23 minutes until they went back into the real world. And you were like on the edge of your seat because you thought the movie was coming to an end. And then you have this sit down chat with Jack Slater and Danny's mom. And he realizes that it's fun to talk to women. He knows who Mozart is now. And Danny is thinking he's like turning him into a wuss or something like that. All just didn't need to be there. I just have a couple more. Less grabby animated cat detective. So maybe Whiskers, the little grab he gave didn't need to exist. And maybe a different actor that plays Danny. I watched this the first time with my wife, and I wasn't even thinking because I was, like us, we watched the movie, and the one change to be a blockbuster is often a tough one because we're just already enjoying the movie. And she's like, if that movie had a different kid, I would have really liked it.
It's also one of these movies that I feel like would have lived on a lot longer. Like if that kid was someone that ended up having was a movie star now. And people were like, oh, have you seen Last Action Hero? It was so-and-so's like first role or something like that. I feel like sometimes to some extent you're like investing in that child actor and you're hoping that they have a career later because then people go back to watch that earlier movie. And they clearly whiffed. I don't know if this kid's been in anything else.
He was in My Girl too.
Right, exactly. So.
This wasn't his version of Basketball Diaries. That's for sure.
Right. If this was like, if it was like, whoa, like Jake Gyllenhaal as a child, all these people would be going back and watching this thing. I don't know who was sort of like the right age at that point.
Just someone else. It might have worked better.
Yeah.
Let's get to spin-off ideas.
I think there are a couple here that almost just seem so obvious that maybe they were planting the seeds for if this was successful.
Oh, they certainly were, because that ticket didn't go anywhere.
Would have had. I think there are two just ones that hit you over the head when you're watching this. The first, Arnold as Hamlet. Like I was watching that, Daydream and thinking, this could really be a thing. How was this never done? They had the trailer basically already made.
That was that's what this movie did well, was it did trailers incredibly well. Like I Jack Slater 4, I wanted to see the rest of that movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that I would definitely have watched it. To be or not to be.
Right. The other one I had is just a straight up sequel, and mainly with all the villains that Benedict rattles off when he's talking to Slater at the end. He's like, I can go back, I can go into movies, I can bring back Dracula, King Kong, Freddy Krueger, Hannibal Lecter. Show me a sequel where you go and do that.
So I'm going to piggyback on this. I have my sequel idea for how to get those guys back in it. Danny.
Let's hear it.
Yep. Danny is recasted and all grown up. and he swore to never use the other half of that ticket again because of what almost happened. He's never going to use it, but he has become a detective himself, and he is married to the actress who played Meredith, which is Bridget Wilson Sampras. I think she's still young enough to be able to handle this role, to be in this movie. I don't know if she is an actress anymore, but either way, he does marry the actress that played his crush in the movie. And Danny notices reports while he's a detective of other cops considering crazy reports that they weren't believing, where people were calling in sightings of Tyrion Lannister, Hannibal Lecter, Dracula, Hans Landa, Scar from Lion King, Freddy Krueger, and no one's believing them. And he uncovers a plot by fictional evil characters to take over the real world because, as Benedict said, bad guys can win here. So Danny, with the help of his wife, has to go use his stub that he promised never to use to recruit movie's best heroes, including the return of Jack Slater, to take down cinema's most evil collection of villains.
They probably had that, like that script probably exists. Before this movie came out, they probably wrote that script and like had it ready to go. And if this movie had been a success, that's probably out 2 years later, right? Like, how is it not?
That was such a tease in the movie when he brought up all those characters. He even says like King Kong. You're like, wait, we're going to get to see this? And you didn't get to see it. I want to see it. It's kind of like a Imagination Land, except not animated.
Yeah, I know. There's the possibilities are endless, and especially in this age of sort of media conglomerates and everyone sort of buying up all this IP, you could see that happening where some film studio has the rights to all these characters, and they could just say, "Hey, why not? Let's put this together and make it happen."
Yep, Chucky versus a Care Bear. I would love to see it.
Why not? Let it rip.
All right, that was a ton of fun as usual. That movie was great, flawed, but also great, which is what we do here. Do you want to go to do you want to talk about what movie's next?
Yeah, next week. It's kind of amazing that we haven't done a movie with this actor yet, because I think you and I both enjoy all of his films. We know that basically, if I can't find something to watch, I know if I fire up a movie that stars this actor, I'm in for a good time. We are watching our first Nick Cage movie next week. We are going to dive into Snake Eyes, probably one of his more underappreciated films, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I can't wait. I haven't seen this movie in a while. I remember a couple parts of it, but it's been a while, and I can't wait to see it. Every Nicolas Cage movie is great. Like you said, anytime you're looking for a movie, he probably just put one out like 5 days ago, so you can just find whatever his new movie is and watch that one. But we'll go back in time and watch Snake Eyes next, because it's going to be great. All right, that was a lot of fun, and see you next time.
Next time, later.